This is Eric Rutan of Cannibal Corpse. You are listening to the Scars and Guitars podcast with Andrew McKay Smith.
G'day everybody, welcome to the show. I've got a magnificent conversation to share with you featuring Kevin Martin from the group Candlebox. Now the catalyst for our chat is due to the group's first and last Australian shows. That's it. They're calling it quits after, maybe not just directly after these shows here, but the foreseeable future in the band does not involve a band. And you'll hear why Kevin talks about, well, he talks about what might possibly be happening. Put it this way, the door's still open, I think. The door's still open, but fans have got to want it. That's always the case anyway. But in addition to talking about the tour, the reasons for shutting shop, we dive deep. We dive deep because Kevin is an industry veteran. He's been around a very, very long time. Candlebox are as old as any of those Seattle bands because they are a Seattle group. So he's got the stories, he's got the tales, and he shares many on this episode. You'll hear his take on ego in the industry, what happened at Lollapalooza 1994. Gosh, long time ago now, almost 30 years ago now. But it was his commentary about Jason Newsted in Metallica, because Candlebox toured with Metallica, that are worth sticking around for alone. But plenty of other killer banter. I really enjoy Kevin's company. I wish him all the success in the world after Candlebox. He's just one of those guys. So here he is, Kevin Martin from Candlebox. How's the? I know you've been doing a lot of these Zoomers with us in Australia, mate. How have they been going?
They've been great. You know, it's been really surprisingly good because, you know, I've never been to Australia. I've been trying to come there for 30 years to play shows, and you know, it's just I've never had an opportunity, and so I'm stoked that actually people want to talk to us and are interested in actually chatting with me about what the band's doing. Yeah.
Hey, sorry to dip into your personal life for a moment, but I was reading somewhere online, it was a social media post, that you're actually married to an Aussie for a bit. Is that correct?
Yeah, Natalie and I have been together 23 years, and she's from Noosa, so we spend every Christmas up in Noosa.
Oh, I've got a place at Maroochydore, mate, so just down the road. Yeah.
Gorgeous, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, it's God's country. You know it. You know it. I mean, you've been there. You know, you practically live there from the sounds of things, and no, well, mate, it's southeast Queensland. I'm convinced is the greatest part of anywhere on the globe, and I've travelled a lot, but it's just so good here, isn't it?
I would not disagree with you. It's my favorite place. You know, I've told the story a million times, you know, over the years that my first band was called Wagga Wagga. For some reason, I've had this affinity with Australia since I could walk. And I'm not really sure why or what. You know, Pear Ubu is one of my favorite bands. Hoodoo Gurus, Powderfinger. The list goes on and on. But I think when I met Natalie, I actually thought she was English because she's got one of those kind of soft Australian posh accents.
Oh yeah.
So I said, "What part of England are you from?" She goes, "I'm fucking Australian." I was like, "Oh, sorry." I was like, "I'm going to marry you. That's great." Yeah.
No, that's nice, mate. No, that's great. Oh well, is there? You've probably been asked this question 100 times as well, but is it just due to promoters not reaching out to you with an appropriate deal that you haven't been able to come down here with the band?
I think, you know, I'm not sure if that's the case. Thank you very much. I think that we kind of always have been the redheaded stepchild of the Seattle music scene. And I think that the promoters in Australia, even though we sold, you know, records there and back in the debut album days, and I actually have a gold record in Australia, as far as I know. But I think because we never went and promoters kind of never really knew about us, we just weren't invited. You know, I've been friends with the guys from Live since 1994, and I've said to Ed a million times, "Hey, next time you go to Australia, take us with you." But it just never seemed to happen. So luckily, this, you know, Silverback promoter just decided to take a chance on us, and fingers crossed, you know, the shows do well. I mean, it is my first and last tour of Australia. That's what we're saying. But I think if things go well and the dates do well, I happily come back and play some festivals or something in the fall. I love Australia. I've been trying to play the Great Northern. I mean, like I said, I've come every Christmas. I've said to the Great Northern promoter, I'm like, "Look, just book me. I'll play acoustic. I don't care if I'm playing to 5 people or 500. Doesn't matter to me. I just want to play in Australia." So I don't really know what, you know, why, but you know, here we come. So we're getting there.
Okay, so it's not necessarily the end of the band. It's because I know it's not being pitched as like a Kiss end of the road style thing, but for you guys, it's just, well, for what you understand and know about what the other guys' intentions and plans are, it could be it. But for you and Candlebox's music, the legend could continue.
It's possible. Yeah, I mean, right now the goal for me is to put it all away, but I've been known to not do that. I don't want to tour anymore, man. It's just so exhausting, unless it's Australia, unless it's places I haven't been, like when we go to England or the UK or even Europe, any part of Europe, I look so much forward to that than I do the States, because it's people that I don't see, it's faces that I haven't played for before. And, you can only tour the States so many times before you start seeing the same, 2,000 people every single night at every show, and you recognize them because they've been at every show. So for me, if things do go well, I will certainly come back, and I would easily, and gladly go to the UK and Europe and do some dates as well. I just can't do the States anymore. I don't want to make records anymore. I don't love it the way I used to. And I just want, I want different experiences.
Yeah. Is that due to the grind of the industry and the fact that I've been doing this for a while now, and I've spoken to literally hundreds of people in your position, and it's a very dishonest industry, and it can wear you out.
Yeah.
It's
completely dishonest. Yeah. It's, I mean, listen, I've made 5 records in the past, let's say 15 years. And I think, maybe 2,000 people have heard them. And, I've done deals with labels on every one of those. And the promise has always been, we're going to spend, 200,000 on marketing, and we're going to do this and this and this. And they don't do any of it. And then at the end of it, they go, well, you didn't sell any records. And you're like, well, let's see your marketing budget. Well, we didn't spend marketing on that. We did this, we went to radio. Why would you go to radio? We're considered a heritage act. So, that's the other downside of being, a band from the 90s from Seattle, is that you're now on every classic rock station across the United States. So you're not even considered contemporary anymore. It's kind of it is a completely heartbreaking and dishonest industry. And it's kind of why I'm at that point where I'm like, I don't want to make music for the same 2,000 people anymore. I wanted to make records that hundreds of thousands of people heard and millions of people heard. And all of my contemporaries, my favorite bands, they all are playing, going out with the Foo Fighters, they're going out with Pearl Jam or somebody like that. And Candlebox is just this band that's just kind of had to fight our way out of every fucking paper bag for the past 30 years.
Yeah, that's weird. You guys were huge back in 94, 95. I remember that because I had a sampler. I remember those cassettes I used to hand out at concerts, and it was a label or agency or whatever. But your songs are on that, and I was thinking, I hope you guys tour. And then, as you know, it didn't happen. But then something else happened not long after that, and we didn't know it at the time. But that scene you're a part of was the last great gasp of mainstream impact of rock and roll, of rock music, because now it's like jazz, metal, and rock. Yeah. It's just you got your aficionados, people like me and you. But for the most part, programmers, the social media elite, all the arseholes, excuse my expression around it, but I just can't stand the way they push urban music and stuff on the youth. Like the kids these days couldn't even probably name a rock band outside of maybe Green Day or Metallica, maybe. I don't even know whether they could even name them at this point. But was there any inkling, given you're in the industry though, was there any inkling that the late 90s and the mid 90s, it was what I mentioned, it was the last gasp of rock music in that way?
Yeah, I think we certainly in Seattle, I think when I moved there when I was 14 years old in 1984. And so, kind of at the height of the bubble building. And I mean, first concert I saw was Soundgarden, and Chris Cornell was playing drums, and they were a 3-piece. But I think we all knew in Seattle that when the music started to happen, and certainly when Nirvana's Nevermind broke, that it was going to break the industry. And so it didn't just blow up as an album, it actually broke the industry. It broke down so many barriers. And I think that honesty and sincerity that came with that record and with those bands is really what changed the movement and the whole direction. I mean, it was literally like a barge just, ran into a ferry and dumped the thing in the fucking water and said, we're done, we're moving on. This is a brand new thing. And it never stopped. And when it did stop, 99, 2000, you kind of look back. Even then, I remember sitting with Guy was here in Maverick Records, and I was like, we were trying to get out of the deal with Maverick, and things weren't going well. And we'd done a Happy Pills record, and And I said, what's your next step? Like, what are you going to do? Because none of this music that's coming out right now is going to matter. And I mean, like, of course, Korn, great fucking band, and a lot of the kind of that metal, the Deftones, of course, that kind of great metal, still the sincerity, still honest, still real. But it didn't have that guttural friction that the Seattle music scene had, or even the Chicago scene with the Pumpkins and Fig Dish and Triple Fast Action and all that kind of, and Veruca Salt. I mean, there was such a really great fucking energy to the music then, and it just became disassociative, and it lost its vision. It's almost like when New Wave came along out of the punk rock movement. That was the decline of the British music scene per se until the 90s, when the Happy Mondays came out and all that thing started to kind of re-energize the Manchester scene. You're never going to see that again. We're never going to see what happened in Seattle ever again. I mean, it's just not going to happen.
No, I agree. I agree completely with you on that point. Yeah, it's just so weird to think that was it. But talking about Maverick, I understand Madonna handpicked all of the artists that were signed to the label. So did you end up having any interaction with her at all?
Yeah. We met her about a year after our record came out. We were on tour with Rush. We were playing Madison Square Garden in New York. She had just come off of, I think when they actually signed us, when our record came out, she was still on, not the Blend, Justify My Love tour, maybe. I can't remember which tour she was on. So we really didn't even get to see her until her tour ended, and we were in New York with Rush. Went to dinner with her, and she was lovely. I mean, she's a really smart woman, and she loved the bands that were on the label. She came to see us play several times, and she was really supportive. And just to kind of, as a vanity label owner, she was hands-on with everything. And Freddie and Guy, I mean, the team was so small when we were the first band to sign to Maverick. So it was Freddie DeMann, Guy Oseary, Ronnie Dashev, Abby Konowich, Madonna, and Lionel Conway. That was Maverick Records and Candlebox. So it really, for her to kind of take that risk and put herself out there, and she made a lot of phone calls for us, man. I mean, she called MTV, she called VH1, she called promoters and said, give him a fucking chance, And that was something that a young band from Seattle really needed, because, we came along 3 years after all those other fucking bands. And so our record in 93 was kind of like, okay, we're done with Seattle. And she pushed us really, really hard. And of course, Letterman, her relationship with Dave, he was really gracious with us and had us on there 3 times on the first album. So, those things were really important to us.
Did you find, given the era which you came out in, so the debut, I think it's 94, am I mistaken? Certainly that's when I heard it. So
it came out in Australia in 94, 93 in Seattle, in the States.
There you go. So, but it was right on the cusp of when the internet was about to drop in its first version, when we all sort of had it on our dial-up machines and all the rest of it. Did you notice that made any positive impact on the bands, on getting you out there to people? In other words, did it open you up to new territories?
Not at that time. One of my best friends, actually my roommate in college, Julian, he was working for Microsoft at the time, and they were developing that early platform of what became their music. I forget what the music program was called that they released, but he was one of the first ones on that. And in the apartment, he had that dial up and the modem thing going and all that stuff. And I was like, what is this? And he's like, well, this is the future. And he still works at Microsoft. He's actually one of their senior executives there, but he's developed, he developed a ton of stuff. And I think for us, it really didn't start to kind of work for us until around 2008, when we focused mainly on the new record we're releasing, Into the Sun, but we really did like an online campaign. That's when we noticed there was a real change, because we started being able to connect with all those fans that we had lost in the 90s. I don't think we could have used it. I mean, when we released it on Maverick, I think they did the 98 was their release for their record store online. And I mean, you try to purchase vinyl or whatever from their store and it didn't work. None of the shit was working, but they had a page. And And I think it was, it was about having a landing page. It was about having some place that people could visit, but you really couldn't do anything, unfortunately, because they didn't want to spend the money on developing it, like most record labels, which is what ended up hurting them anyways, because they were, informed that music was going to get pirated, and they didn't want to do what Sony did with television and film. They didn't want to block that.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. Did you notice, though, with Napster, that gave the band a bit of an uptick when the file sharing thing started to become, well, it was only there for a short period of time. It was 6 months or thereabouts, wasn't it? But I know with bands like Iron Maiden and stuff, it introduced them to an entirely new generation of fans. So did that happen for you guys?
No, we weren't. That whole Napster thing did not affect us. I mean, we may have seen 1% growth, but, at that point, I think we were such a second thought from that Seattle music scene. If they were trading anything, if it was going to be Pearl Jam, it was going to be Nirvana, it was going to be Soundgarden, it was going to be live shows. It didn't affect us at all because we had kind of stepped out of the limelight at that point, and we were just trying to survive as a band.
Mm. Were you the sort of band that could play shows with bands like Queensryche and then Soundgarden? Could you? For my taste, you straddle the divide a little bit.
We did. We actually did shows with Soundgarden back in the day. We never played with Queensryche, but back in the day we did shows with Soundgarden. Tool actually opened for Candlebox, surprisingly. And so did Radiohead when we had the great success of the debut album. So I can at least say that Radiohead opened for me. But yeah, we could have done that, and we had some of those. It's funny because I knew Chris. I met him when I was 16. I was working at Fluvog Shoes with Susan Silver, who was his manager and ex-wife now. But at the time, she was managing Soundgarden and stuff. And so the guys would come in for the flyers, and Chris and I we used to sit around and talk about music all the time. When the band happened, I never asked him for a favor, and I probably should have. I could have, the band certainly could have used a voice like Chris Cornell saying, "Hey, you should check out Candlebox's new record." But I never did that because I felt like I wanted us to, be our own. I wanted us to have our own footing and be able to, kind of argue that the band is, worth more than the Seattle guys telling people that we're good. But I probably should have asked for that. But yeah, I mean, we could have certainly toured with Soundgarden. I mean, we've got, our second record, Lucy's got some pretty progressive tracks on it that would have worked well with that audience. I've always thought that we should be touring with Alice in Chains. But I know that Sean Kinney doesn't like the band, so that's why that doesn't happen.
Is that right? Do you know what that's about?
Yeah. Look, I mean, we're friends. I've known him. He used to borrow drumsticks from me. I was a drummer before I was a singer. And he used to come to my rehearsal room and borrow drumsticks from me all the time. But he goes, "Dude, I love you as a person. We're friends." He goes, "I don't want to listen to Candlebox every night." And I'm like, that's fair enough. I understand.
God, it's a bit honest though, isn't it?
Yeah, well, that's how he is. I mean, and that's that's kind of the thing about those Seattle bands, man. None of them would bullshit you. They would never say, "Yeah, we're going to help you out," and then not. They say, "Nah, I don't like it."
Jesus. Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I think you do. My values, I suppose, is you help your mates out. But
well, I mean, they did. If you think about it, they did because From its inception, the grunge movement with Mudhoney, prior to that being spacing on the name, but the
Melvins.
Deep Six with the Melvins, Green River, Malfunction, like Soundgarden early stuff. So kind of the inception of the grunge movement, all those bands played together or they were in a band together. So, if it's like, it was so ancestral, dude. The Seattle music scene, Hiro Yamamoto was in 4 other bands before he was in Soundgarden. He was also in a band called Truly. Matt Cameron was in a band called Bam Bam before he was in Soundgarden. 2 of the guys from Bam Bam joined Truly later on in their inception. So Mark Arm being, kind of the godfather of that movement. He's, God knows how many bands he's had. The Melvins, same thing. Skin Yard, Screaming Trees, Grunt Truck. They all played in bands together. Blood Circus, I think Brent was in 4 bands from the Seattle music scene. So it was really, really ancestral. So when we came along, like I said, we were the redheaded stepchild or the little brother that, they didn't really want at the party. So that's kind of why the only person who ever gave us any love in any way, shape or form publicly was Mark Arm. And that's just because I've known him for 50 fucking years. And he's a great guy, but he's the only one who ever kind of gave us any kind of credit.
I know Kurt and the Metal Church. Well, Kurt in particular is from Seattle. Metal Church, I know they're a different scene, but did you have any interactions with those guys?
With the Nirvana guys?
Oh, Metal Church.
Metal Church. No, I never knew those guys, and I always loved them. I was sad to hear that he passed this year. No, they were great, man. Metal Church they were a special kind of rock and roll that came out, and a lot of people don't even know they were from Seattle. Yeah,
I know. They're a Seattle band. Like Queensryche, a lot of people don't realize you guys are from Seattle either. There's just a thing, isn't there, where people sort of associate certain bands with a region and other bands they don't. But what was you may have answered this, and we've probably touched on it, but you have survived and you've got to the point where you've had a credible career. But what would you say the most significant challenge was that you had to overcome in the last sort of 30 years whilst you've been a working musician?
Ego. Just ego. I mean, ego is just it's the worst part of being in a band, and it's crushed. Like there's a documentary coming out about Candlebox next year, and people are going to be surprised to see what really happened to us back in the the 90s. Ego is just it's the biggest fucking ruiner of everything in the world. And that's whether it's Guy Oseary from Maverick Records or Freddie DeMann from Maverick Records or the guys in my band or other bands that we played shows with. I mean, I'll give you an example. When we did Woodstock 94, we were the only band on that festival that had a record in the top 10, let alone top 20 Billboard. We have the number 7 record. We were added for the Friday night. We were the headliner on the Friday night with the Violent Femmes. We went to do the press conference in the press tent. Our A&R rep, a guy named Larry White, who had worked with the Chili Peppers, he'd worked with Joy Division, he'd worked with everybody. Walks in and he's like, "Hey, Larry, how are you?" He's like, "Ladies and gentlemen, so nice to see you all. Of course, you know who I am, and I'm here with one of our favorite bands from Warner Brothers, Maverick Records right now. Candlebox, they have the number 7 record in the country. They're currently moving 175,000 units a week, blah, 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 blah. And they're so stoked to be here. We'd like to open the floor for questions." Not one fucking question. So, I mean, it's been an uphill battle, man.
That speaks to the ignorance of journalists at the time who only wanted to speak to Billy Joe, whatever his name is, from Green Day or what have you.
Well, even then, I don't think nobody really gave a shit about Green Day at that point. They were just Dookie was blowing up, but it wasn't as exciting as if they hadn't had that mud fight at Woodstock 94. I don't know if they'd have got as much press out of what they were doing as they did. But that mud fight was so substantial and such a game changer for the weekend that it was all over every single news organization. Green Day was creeping. Their record was not selling great, and because they were our partners on Warner Brothers. So, and Helena Coram, who was touring with us as our A&R agent, was also their A&R rep for Warner Brothers. So we were hearing the stories and going back and forth as to what was happening. And it was, it really was that kind of, when everybody started throwing the mud and shit, that's when everybody paid attention to them.
Was that your perception at the time around all of the mud throwing and the stuff? Was it something that just you thought, oh, well, it'll be here today, gone tomorrow, that sort of thing? But it's ended up becoming the enduring iconography of that festival, of that event, that entire event.
100%. And I mean, I think that everybody knew that it was going to be the one thing that everybody talked about. For the 99 one, it's, Limp Bizkit with the "let's break some shit" and everybody burning, the house down. But with Woodstock 94, it was that Green Day moment where everybody's just like, what are these fucking, and it's perfect for them because they're brats and they're punk rock brats. And it was exactly what needed to happen. I mean, standing on the side of the stage watching that was hilarious, and getting hit with mud was even funnier, but they didn't fucking care. They were so stoked to be doing it. And that's what's so cool about it. And that was what was so cool about Green Day. And kind of that early rock and roll scene that was happening in the 90s, it was just cool. Nobody gave a shit. Nobody was dressing up in leather pants and, crap like that to go out and play shows. It was like, we're wearing our clothes and this is the show we're playing. And if you like it, great. If you don't, who cares?
I don't know whether Ed and the guys in Live told you, but when they came to Australia for the Alternative Nation Festival in 1995, the same thing happened to them. In at the Sydney show, they got pelted with mud as well. And I think it was either him or Ed or the guitarist, I can't remember his name, or Michael Gudinski,
Chad Taylor,
promoter. Yeah, he said something like, "Hey, we're not fucking Green Day."
Yeah. Chad Taylor, because I had the gracious view with Chad, and we've talked about that several times.
There you go.
It's. I mean, it's really funny, but they, and live was huge in Australia. I mean, they still are, which is amazing. People love them, and they're a great band.
Yeah, well, personally, I found it a bit odd because no disrespect to them whatsoever, but they're, Powderfinger, who you already mentioned, they're sort of similar vein to that. They just occasionally you find a band in Australia, people around here just pick up on it and they just go, and they don't let go of it. And that was one of those bands. But it does that. An adjacent point to that would be, I think in every serious artist's career, like a career like yours, there's a sliding doors moment where things could have gone either way. Do you remember when that was for you?
Probably 99, 98 when we were doing the Happy Pills record and everything had gone to shit at that point with the band. When we were fighting with Maverick, our A&R guy, Guy Osiri, wasn't even our A&R guy anymore. They hired, what the hell was his name? Tim. I can't remember. No. Guy who signed Alice in Chains, Nick.
I don't know the guy. Just
Turzo.
Nick
Turzo. So Nick Turzo became our A&R guy like overnight. We're in the middle of a record, and he walks into the studio and he's like, "Yeah, I don't like any of this. I don't know what you guys are doing, but we're gonna need to scrap this and start over." And we were like, "We're fucking recording a record right now." And that was a strange thing. And then we stopped, rewrote 6 songs. And that's when I was like, yeah, I don't know what this is going to be for me anymore. And I'm surprised we made it through the record, and surprised that we actually were able to get Happy Pills out and on a label as well. Because I think we were just so kind of beat down at that point.
Yeah, that sucks. Yeah. I don't think that the modern rock and metal, for the music fan, the young, the Gen Zer, if you like, understands how much clout and how much power the A&R man actually had in the recording studio with bands like you guys. It was huge. Yeah. That's just one mini.
Yeah, when they say no, there's no money. The money stops. And that was, that was the hardest thing back then, man, was to have Nick say, yeah, we're going to stop this right now, and I need a single. So we worked on Sometimes, and It's All Right. So that's when we wrote Sometimes, It's All Right, and Happy Pills for the album. Because Nick was like, we're not paying for anything else until we get these fucking songs right.
Yeah, okay. But on a more positive note, what would you say has been the highlight or maybe even the highlights throughout the career so far?
Just the fans. I mean, I'd love to meet the first person that bought our CD outside of Seattle. Like, I don't know who that is, but I would love to just go walk up to him and say, "Hey, man, thanks for starting this." Because that first record, it's the happiest accident we've ever had as a band. I don't think it should have ever worked out the way it did. I don't particularly think it's a great record. I know people would argue with me, and there's 7.5 million fans around the world that would argue with me about that. But I do believe that that the fans are the best thing that I've experienced over the past 30 years. I mean, the music is one thing, and touring with bands you love, and meeting the guys from Rush and that sort of thing, and Metallica and whatnot. Those are magical moments. But the fans, just without them, the story is as cliche as it is to say, there's no career.
Have you read some of the YouTube comments under the videos for Far Behind and some of those early singles? Have you seen what people are saying about the band?
No.
Saved my life, gave me a connection to my long deceased father, this sort of thing. They're very profound comments that people have left for you. Wow.
That's amazing. No, I've never, I don't use YouTube, so maybe I should get on there to feel good about myself.
Well, when your biography comes out, mate, make sure you just have a bit of a read of that. And anytime you're riding through those moments where it's a bit of a dirge and it's a grind, mate. But it's rock music is enduringly powerful in that it's like a friend. and it can pull you through those moments, especially when you're young, mate, and life sucks and doesn't make a lot of sense. I mean, God help me, if it wasn't for rock and metal for me, mate, I think life would have been profoundly more bleak. And I think that I share that with a lot of people that are into the music.
Yeah. No, I mean, listen, I've had bands that changed my life when I was a kid. Henry Rollins, I mean, my first concert, I was 12 years old. I went to see Black Flag.
Oh, yeah.
In San Antonio, and I jumped up on stage to do a stage dive, and I hit the ground and nobody picked me up. And Henry saw that, so he grabbed me, pulled me on stage, and I ended up singing the latter part of Damaged with him. And in 1994, I toured Europe with him, and I couldn't talk to him because I was so like starstruck. And he's like, "What's your problem?" We get to Hamburg the last show, and I was like, "Dude, I can't, like, you changed my life when I was fucking 12 years old. You changed everything for me." I go, I have every record you've ever released. You have signed 7 of my fucking Black Flag 12 inches. I'm like, you fucking saved my life as a kid. And it's just weird that I'm on tour with you, you know? What a fucking strange, weird world we live in. And he was like, okay, cool. I just thought you were a prick from Seattle. And that's what he said to me. And I was like, nice to meet you. Thanks very much, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, gotcha. Are you still in touch with Henry?
No, I haven't. I bumped into him about 10 years ago at a party in LA, but no, I don't keep in touch with him.
Intense guy. He's got a lot to share. He's the only person that I've ever seen, or I don't know him, but he's the only person I've ever seen that seems to be more at ease and more himself in front of tens of thousands of people than in a room with somebody just having a conversation. And I've been able to triangulate that by talking to ex-agents and things like that who talk about how awkward he can be just in the day-to-day, but he's just who he is, who we've all seen he is.
Well, he has that memory too, where like, he never forgets anything. So, there's like, you know, like some actress has it as well. Like he can remember, like when I said to him, I was like, you know, I jumped on stage and he's like, "You're that kid?" And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "That was SBC Hall in San Antonio in 90. He goes, "That was 82, right?" And I said, "Yeah, it was 82. And he's like, "Holy shit, you're that kid." I mean, he remembers everything.
Holy shit. Yeah. Well, that's an amazing memory to have that. Yeah. Please tell me you've got designs on a biography or a memoir.
No, I've been asked to write the book. You know, I mean, I think that there's a lot that I could talk about, but there's what I'd really like to talk about. I think I'd have to probably release the book after I die. You know, touring with Metallica, touring with Rush, touring with Aerosmith, you know, the things that I've seen, you know, backstage at Letterman, you know, there's so much stuff that needs to be told. And I just, you know, I don't know, man, I'm not sure if I want to share that part of my life. It's something that, and again, I've had other friends that said, well, then don't write about that. Write about everything you've experienced getting up to this point. But I don't know if I'm that interesting.
I think you're definitely,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think you're interesting. I think you definitely tick that box. But I agree with you. You got to be comfortable within yourself before you start sharing those sort of those memories that you hold. And just on that note, touring with Metallica, did you witness any of the tension between Jason and the rest of the band?
It was incredibly tense.
Yeah,
that whole tour in '94 was, and they weren't even going to kick him out at that point. He just was such the outsider. You know, he did not live that life that Lars and James and Kirk lived, where it was just like, you know, party. Jason was like, I want to play fucking music and I want to rock out, and that's what I want to do. And we would spend a lot of time with him because I wasn't like a blow guy. I never partied like that. So Jason and I hung out a lot and just would talk music and because I did not, I was like, I'm not about to sit around and do cocaine with, you know, Lars or whatever and just talk about a bunch of bullshit for fucking 4 hours. You know, that wasn't my thing. There's nothing wrong with that. It just wasn't my cup of tea. And I really, I'll do a Blanton's, please. And I really, I liked him. He was a really, really nice guy, but there was crazy tension. That whole tour was really tough, man, because, you know, they were on that last, I think the third year of the Black Album, and they were selling out 70,000, 80,000 seats, you know, still on that record. It was fucking crazy.
Yeah, it's odd. That's a phenomenon, that record there. And to be honest, I don't even think it's that great an album. It's a decent album. I'm not saying it's bad, but I can't listen to it beyond the mid-90s or what have you. But yeah, the Jason thing, he's one bloke I've got a bunch of Jason's stories. This is another one. One day he will tell his story, because at the moment he's not prepared to do it, and I get that.
No.
You can just see the suffering that poor bastard has gone through. You can see it. It's wretched. He's got the lines. He's got the suffering lines on his face. You know.
Yeah. They were hard on him, man. I mean, they were hard on him. Even his crew guys, that worked for him, were hard on him.
Jesus Christ, yeah. What about Joey and Steve? Because in Aerosmith, because they didn't get along either.
We didn't see them much. We only did, I think we did like 3 or 4 weeks with them. We only interacted with them one time, which was like 2 nights before the New Year's Eve show, which was the New Year's Eve show was in Boston. And we really didn't have much of a connection with those. The Flaming Lips guys, we were inseparable with them. It was a blast. Same with the Rush guys. Like, we would hang out in their dressing room. They can hang out with our dressing room. But the Aerosmith guys, I mean, because they were all sober and they were trying to stay sober, and we were still drinking and stuff. So it was we had to stay in our dressing room if we had alcohol or whatever. But they were a great band. I mean, their performances were spectacular every night.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing about Rush. You mentioned Rush. There just aren't any bad stories out there about those guys.
No.
They're so
and you can't. Even Joe Perry. So when Aerosmith took Rush out, they gave him half PA, half lights and sound. And that was in like 70, I believe it was 76. Because the guys in Rush told us the story years later when we toured with them. And when Joe left the band in 79 and he went out and opened up for Rush, they gave him full lights, full PA, full sound, full crew, full, dressing room, everything. And he even said to them, I can't believe you guys are being this nice to me. And he goes, well, it's not you, it's your band. That's what the guys in Rush said. Thank you. And it wasn't, personality wise. It's just, they're weird dudes, and they're from Boston, and they kind of always were considered the American Stones, which they didn't like. And from our understanding of touring with them, they just didn't like themselves. And it wasn't that they didn't like one another. They just didn't like themselves. And can you imagine being in Aerosmith and having to be sober? Like, you're one of the biggest rock and roll bands in the world in the 80s. And your careers come back with the record pump, and you're ginormous, and you've got to go out and play shows with guys in the band you don't really like, and you don't really like yourself, and you got to do it sober. It must be a really, really strange feeling.
Well, you just hope you're making bank. That's the only reason you do it. I mean, you can't.
That's why they tour.
Yeah, exactly. I know it's a bit sad at this point. I'm seeing. Well, look, we're all seeing it. I really get the impression with you and with Candlebox that this is for the love of it. You just enjoy doing it at this point. But
that's it.
These bands that are signed to these bloody labels at the moment, and most of the labels do it. The albums are just there to support the touring, which is where they're making all of the money. Now, I know they're kind of victims of that business model because of what happened with streaming and the like, so I'm not too critical about it. But holy shit, man, where are the classic modern rock albums these days? They aren't there. They aren't.
Well,
there.
labels don't allow them. Labels don't allow them. Listen, I'm a huge fan of Gang of Youths, and I think that I love what they're producing. I know that they're not producing, rock and roll, but because it's pop, but at least they're epic albums. And it's they're a band of guys that aren't afraid. A guitar player left before this last record, right? The main songwriter.
I'm not sure, to be honest with you. Yeah.
But I love the fact that they're allowing themselves to put out these albums that are, 18, 19 songs. In America, labels will let you release 12, but they'll only pay you for 10. It's a complete fucking con job. So it's a different, it is very different. Get out of here, you fucking bee. It's just a different world. But yeah, labels don't allow it. Iron Maiden, if they tried to come out right now, it would never happen. Even Avenged Sevenfold, I think they're actually getting grief right now for their last record. And, the fans are kind of bored of them because they've been gone for so long, and, and all that sort of thing. So, I don't know, man. I think that there are labels, like we almost signed to that Golden Robot, which is over there. I believe they're out of Melbourne.
I love talking to people like you, mate, who've actually been there and done it and who've managed to have the career, because you can't do it anymore. It's gone. It's done. And, mate, I feel like when guys like you no longer want to make music, it's really down to the metal artists, because the rock side of things, there's a Greta Van Fleet thing, but I can't connect with that shit.
No.
it's not. You know what I mean when I say it's not authentic. God bless him. Good luck to him. But I don't think
I'm with you.
Yeah,
I'm with you. I don't understand that band at all.
No, look, I've put it on once or twice, and it's like it just sounds like a cover band to me, like a really polished cover band with a bit more mainstream edge than what Led Zeppelin could ever have had. But I just feel like
I'd rather listen to Kingdom Come if I'm going to listen to a band that sounds like Led Zeppelin.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, precisely. Yeah. Yeah, it's just there are a lot of. I don't want to paint too bleak a picture. There, my mate Matt Wilcock down in Melbourne, he's in Shotgun Mistress. He's got Werewolves. Great band, Shotgun Mistress. But even there's things like I don't think their next album's going to come out, mate. Yeah, and I've got it because he sent it to me. But it's a killer fucking album too, man. But this is what I mean. Like the business side of it has just become so cutthroat to the point where legitimate releases can't be released. Hey, look, I'm an author, mate. And I release books myself these days because I can't get Hachette to return a phone call. Nobody cares. Unless you're established and got like 100,000 Facebook followers or whatever, or more, actually. Yeah. They don't want to know. But there you go. Yeah. Mate, it's been fantastic to chat with you. Really, I really like this chat, I've got to say. So good luck on the tour, mate. It's going to be a success, that there'll be plenty of people down here, mate. And I will, look, I don't want to give it the kiss of death and say I'll definitely be in the audience because that's when the kids, I've got something on that night or something, but I'm going to try and be in the audience.
I would love to meet you, man. So let me know if you are. I mean, you can reach out to me via the Instagram page. I run the Candlebox one. So if you're going to be there, please do let me know. And I'd love to say hello.
Thank you very much, brother. I really appreciate it. That's very kind. Thank you.
Thanks, mate.
All right, all the best, man. Catch ya.
We'll see you.
Tremendous fella. It might sound like a cliche because I say it quite a bit, but I just truly love talking to the fellas that have been in the bands for decades. They've been there, they've done it, they've got the stories to share, as you just heard. Exactly why I love doing this podcast here. Had a good chat with the brothers from Obituary as well. They were a day apart, so it was a very good week. It was last week, actually. I've just been so flat out. But it was a very good week that week for the podcast. Now, if you enjoyed that chat with Kevin Martin from Candlebox, you will like many more that I have posted over at scarsandguitars.com. And if you like listening, I know you do because you're a smart person. You're listening to the show after all, which means you like reading. You like a book from time to time, and you're in luck because I've written one. Click on the link in the banner on the website and you'll be taken to a marketplace of your choice. You know what to do from there. If you do purchase the book, do hit me up because I want to thank you in person. Rightio, there's some more information to share with you about the book in the moment, but before we get to that, I want to bid you a fond farewell. My name is Andrew Mackay-Smith. I am the host of the Scars and Guitars podcast. Until next time, it is a very goodbye for now.
This is Eric Rattan of Cannibal Corpse. You are listening to the Scars and Guitars podcast with Andrew Mackay-Smith.
I've been the host of the Scars and Guitars podcast since 2017. The first musician I interviewed for the show was David Vincent from Morbid Angel, and things have just snowballed from there. In all, I've posted almost 650 podcast episodes featuring conversations with many of the leading lights of rock, heavy metal, and beyond. It just got to a point where I thought, I need to write a book about all this, so that's exactly what I did. In Scars and Guitars Volume 1, you'll read a heap of deep reveals and commentary, such as Des Fafara talking about Coal Chamber and why the band will never return.
If you're a band just starting out, you need to hear me. Do not start a band with partners. Ever.
Yeah, wise words there. Sage advice, mate, for anybody.
Don't ever, because I can't go do Coal Chamber right now unless I get others involved.
Phil Anselmo talks about the episode in his career which gives him the greatest sense of accomplishment.
I think the staying power of the fans and the staying power of the songs, whether it's Pantera, Down, or Superjoint, the fans remember the songs.
Alex Skolnick from Testament confirms that, yes, playing the guitar in Ozzy's band is anything but an ordinary gig. Will Silent Oz from Dimmu Borgir write a book? Pa from Sabaton gives advice to people who want to start a band.
Look at the team around you, look at the bandmates. If the guys want to be on the stage, then it's all cool. If the guys want to be backstage, then it's not gonna be cool.
Current and former members of Cradle of Filth discuss the band's seminal 90s material. Read about the reaction to George Lynch and Mark from Suicide Silence's comments when they throw shade at then President Donald Trump.
We have this idiotic monster, this egotistical, self-aggrandizing, complete piece of shit in there. I just can't understand how we've gotten to this place.
And yeah, we kicked a hornet's nest with Sepultura. Percussive overlord Gene Hoglan talks about recording with Chuck Schuldiner.
Chuck was always, he was very, very open-minded, and he was into having his musicians that were playing with him just reach out for the best stuff that they had.
Phil Campbell from Motorhead discusses what it takes to get sober. John Five answers his critics who dismiss his tenure with Marilyn Manson.
My name is John Five, and Manson gave me that name, and I had some of the best years of my life in that band and learned a lot.
And we get the lowdown on Treyarch Zagtoth from those who would know, including his mother. All across Scars and Guitars Volume 1, there are moments of tension, relief, tragedy, exhilaration, and throughout it all, you'll obtain insight that I believe no one else has managed to obtain from many of your favourite artists. So treat yourself. Scars and Guitars Volume 1 is currently available as an ebook with a print edition on the horizon. Follow the links attached and download a sample. I'm sure you'll be compelled to read the whole book.